You can't understand a theory without understanding the person who bled for it. Dietrich Bonhoeffer wasn't a philosopher in an ivory tower. He wasn't an academic playing intellectual games. He was a pastor, a theologian, and above all, a man caught in the darkest machinery of human history. Nazi Germany. Born in 1906 into an educated, privileged German family, Bonhoeffer could have stayed safe. He was brilliant, well-connected, respected. But when the Nazi regime began its slow, terrifying rise, he saw something that many didn't or wouldn't. He saw not only the evil of a tyrant, but the terrifying silence and complicity of the people around him. He joined the resistance. He spoke out against Hitler when it was suicide to do so. He became part of a conspiracy to overthrow the regime, a move that would eventually cost him his life. In 1943, Bonhoeffer was arrested. He spent 2 years in prison, and it's there in the shadows of cold stone cells, under the threat of death, with the sound of marching boots above, that he developed what we now call his theory of stupidity. Bonhoeffer wasn't trying to be clever. He wasn't trying to win an argument. He was trying to answer a question that haunted him. How could so many decent, educated, ordinary people allow, even participate in, something as monstrous as the Third Reich? He had seen evil up close. But what shocked him more than evil itself was the mindless, passive surrender of millions. Not because they were evil, not because they were unintelligent, but because they had willingly, sometimes eagerly stopped thinking. It wasn't malice that destroyed his country. It was stupidity. And he knew. This stupidity was not an individual flaw. It was a social disease, one that spreads quietly, invisibly, until it's too late. Here's the part that catches most people off guard. When Bonhoeffer talks about stupidity, he's not insulting anyone's intelligence. He's not calling people dumb because they lack knowledge or education. In fact, many of the people he saw falling into this trap were highly educated. Doctors, lawyers, professors, even clergy. Because for Bonhoeffer, stupidity is not a problem of the intellect. It's a problem of the will. It's not about how smart you are. It's about whether you choose to think at all. A stupid person is not someone who is uninformed. A stupid person is someone who has abandoned their capacity for critical thought, someone who no longer listens, no longer questions, no longer examines the world around them because it's easier, safer, more comfortable not to. And here's where it gets dangerous. Bonhoeffer noticed. Stupidity doesn't appear randomly. It doesn't just happen. It is cultivated. It grows in certain conditions, especially when people are afraid, when they're under pressure, when they surrender their autonomy to authority, or when they want to belong to something bigger, even if that thing is dangerous. When these conditions arise, people stop thinking for themselves. They outsource their minds. 2 slogans: propaganda, groupthink. They don't argue because they no longer know how. They don't question because questions feel like betrayal. They don't doubt because doubt is exhausting. When the world demands blind loyalty, Bonhoeffer realized, stupidity is not an individual defect. It's a systemic, contagious phenomenon. It thrives not in isolation, but in crowds, in ideologies, in times of fear and crisis. And perhaps the most terrifying thing about stupidity is this: it's voluntary. People choose it. Because thinking is hard. Doubt is uncomfortable. Responsibility is heavy. So they let go. Stupidity doesn't grow in the wild. It needs the right conditions. And nothing makes it bloom faster than power. Bonhoeffer observed something chilling. The more power spreads, the more stupidity flourishes. Not because power makes people less intelligent, but because it creates an environment where people feel they no longer need to think. When a system becomes oppressive, when a leader demands loyalty over truth, when propaganda fills every space, people stop asking questions. They stop thinking critically. Not because they can't, But because they believe it no longer matters, Bonhoeffer wrote, stupidity is not a natural state, it's a surrender. And most people don't surrender to stupidity because they want to. They do it because it's easier to obey than to resist. In oppressive systems, the stakes of questioning become too high. A stupid person is often not someone who lacks awareness, but someone who has convinced themselves that awareness is dangerous. And here's the sinister brilliance of power. It doesn't need you to be evil. It just needs you to stop thinking. Stupidity becomes a defense mechanism, a way to survive, to fit in, to avoid conflict, but the cost is catastrophic. The moment we give up our responsibility to think, we become tools, not individuals. We become vessels, carrying someone else's agenda, often without even realizing it. The Stoics, centuries before Bonhoeffer, warned of this very thing. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value. If none of them know themselves, when people stop thinking for themselves, they become a crowd, and a crowd can be led anywhere." One of Bonhoeffer's most unsettling insights was this: a stupid person is not free. They may appear to be making choices, living their lives, even defending their opinions loudly, but their autonomy is an illusion, because stupidity paralyzes the will. It disconnects the person from their own judgment, their ability to evaluate right from wrong, truth from lie. The stupid person becomes a mouthpiece for someone else's words, a vessel for someone else's ideas. They don't think, they repeat. They don't reflect, they react. They don't question, they conform. And the terrifying part is, they believe. They are acting freely. Bonhoeffer wasn't describing fools or idiots. He was describing ordinary people. People who, under pressure, chose to silence their own minds in exchange for comfort, belonging, survival. The Stoics understood this danger long before the 20th century. Epictetus warned, "No man is free who is not master of himself." For the Stoics, freedom isn't about politics. It's about whether you govern your own thoughts. In a world where stupidity spreads like a virus, autonomy becomes the first casualty. When you stop questioning, when you allow fear, power, or ideology to do the thinking for you, you may still speak, but the voice is no longer yours. You've outsourced your mind. You've given away the one thing that makes you human, the ability to choose your thoughts. This is where Bonhoeffer's theory becomes almost unbearable. Evil is not the greatest threat. Stupidity is. Evil is visible. It has intent. It can be named, opposed, resisted, but stupidity? It is invisible, unintentional, and everywhere. It does not plot. It does not scheme. It simply obeys, amplifies, executes, without question, without awareness, without malice. And that makes it unstoppable. Bonhoeffer had looked evil in the eye, but what terrified him most were not the men giving orders, it was the millions who followed those orders without ever asking why, who nodded along, who looked away, who laughed at the jokes, repeated the slogans, cast the votes, without thinking, because stupidity doesn't need a reason to destroy. It doesn't think far enough ahead to care about consequences. It burns the house down. Just because someone handed it a match, Bonhoeffer wrote, "Against stupidity, we are defenseless. Neither protests, nor the use of force accomplish anything here. Reasons fall on deaf ears. And this is why stupidity is more destructive than evil, because evil at least knows what it wants. It can be anticipated, fought, negotiated with. Stupidity cannot. It has no plan, no logic, no awareness of what it is doing. And worst of all, it believes it is right. A stupid person is not aware of their own power. They become an instrument, a weapon, wielded by forces they do not understand. And in their blindness, they will tear down everything: truth, justice, dignity, even themselves. The Stoics, too, warned about this destruction. Seneca wrote, "The greatest harm comes from those who act without understanding, because ignorance, armed and empowered, is far more dangerous than deliberate malice." And when stupidity becomes systemic, normalized, weaponized, evil doesn't even need to knock on the door. The door is already open. And here's the hardest truth Bonhoeffer left us. You cannot argue stupidity out of existence. You can't debate it away. You can't present facts and expect it to disappear, because stupidity does not live in the realm of reason. The more you try to confront a stupid person, the more they retreat into their false certainty. They don't listen. They don't engage. They deflect, deny, laugh it off. Because stupidity is not a lack of information. It's the refusal to think. It's not an intellectual problem. It's a moral one. And here's what makes it worse. Stupidity feeds on confrontation. When you challenge it, it hardens. When you argue, it doubles down. To the stupid person, admitting uncertainty feels like death, like losing belonging. Safety, identity.com. The Stoics knew this too. They taught, you cannot control other people's minds, only your own. Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Bonhoeffer understood the same truth. You cannot liberate a stupid person. From the outside, the door is locked. From within, the only way to fight stupidity is not with reason, but by changing the conditions that allow it to grow, and that's where the real work begins. The Stoics saw it coming. They had another name for it: folly. For them, folly was not about lacking intelligence. It was about lacking mastery over oneself. It was about living, unconsciously, at the mercy of emotions, crowds, and fear. Epictetus taught, true freedom lies in governing your own mind. He said, it's not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of things. What Bonhoeffer described as the paralysis of will, the Stoics described as the loss of reason. Marcus Aurelius wrote, the opinion of 10,000 men is of no value. If none of them know themselves, the crowd is dangerous, not because of its size, but because of its thoughtlessness. Seneca warned, the mob is not wise. It is composed of individuals who, taken alone, may be reasonable, but when together, surrender to their worst instincts. The Stoics believed, wisdom is not intellectual brilliance. It is the daily disciplined choice to think, to question, to act with integrity, even when the world around you does not. And in this, they and Bonhoeffer speak the same truth. The enemy is not ignorance. The enemy is the abandonment of reason. The enemy is the comfortable lie that someone else will do the thinking for us. So, what do we do with all of this? It's easy to feel hopeless, to look at the world, at history, at the present, and see stupidity everywhere. But Bonhoeffer didn't write these words to condemn humanity. He wrote them to warn us, to wake us up. Because stupidity is not a permanent condition. It's a choice, a habit, a consequence of fear, pressure, and the seductive comfort of obedience. And the only cure is freedom. Not political freedom, though that matters, but the deeper, harder freedom of the mind. The freedom to think, to question, to resist the urge to conform, to take responsibility for your own thoughts. Bonhoeffer believed people become stupid when their freedom is taken from them, or when they give it away, when they trade the discomfort of thinking for the ease of belonging. The Stoics knew this cure too. They taught, no one can make you free except yourself. In the end, Bonhoeffer's theory is not a theory at all. It's a call, a reminder that the greatest danger we face is not from evil men plotting in the shadows, but from good, ordinary people who stop thinking, who stop questioning, who surrender their will to the crowd. And it's an invitation to choose something else, to choose freedom over comfort, responsibility, over obedience, awareness, over ignorance.com. Because stupidity is not out there in other people, it's inside all of us, waiting for the moment we let our guard down. And the world we build tomorrow will depend entirely on whether we choose to wake up today.